Howdy, this is new. Before anyone says it, I already know I sound like a balloon. I'm sick. It's allergies. We're pushing through it. It's fine. Whatever. So yeah, some of you guys might already know this, but I kind of made it my 2020 resolution to read more. It's something I liked doing a lot when I was a kid and in high school, but ever since I kind of got to college, I just fell out of it. I haven't read anything that's like not been related to my studies in a really long time. When I remember to do my textbook readings. Either way, I want to read more. And I have a bunch of books that I keep buying and just never get around to, so I'm trying to clear those out and figure what ones I actually want to keep and what ones I want to donate. And on top of that, I'm kind of using this time to force myself into making time for self-care. Like, I read for at least a little bit each day, and I'm trying to turn my brain off and chill, and that's nice, and I want that to be, like, a permanent habit. Like, just 30 minutes aside where I just vegetate, but, like, in a good way. That being said, I've also, like, low-key gotten into BookTube, I guess. I never thought I would be, but I like it a lot. It's kind of like a little book club, and I think it's really cute. Plus a lot of the people who do it are really insightful and, like, actually really funny. I just really enjoy them. I really like Read with Cindy and Paperback Dreams, but I'm always down to check out other people's opinions on stuff, so if you know anyone else that I should be looking into, let me know. Anyway, it's kind of a thing on BookTube to do a big overhaul and talk about all the books you read in a month, so I wanted to try to do that because I think it would be fun, and also it's nice trying to keep track of all of the books that I read in a year if it's gonna be something that I do. I don't know, I just wanted to try it. I don't know if I'll do it every month, but I just wanted to see if it would be fun or not. So for February, I read 4 books. They're all a little on the short side because I knew if I picked something huge, I would get kind of intimidated and not get back into the groove. So I'm hoping by the end of the year, I'll get to dive into that, like, 700-page mystery novel I bought over the summer and never read. So I'll toss in some timestamps down in the comments so you guys can skip to whatever book you want to hear about if you don't want to sit all the way through everything. Whatever. Doesn't hurt my feelings. So we're going to talk about The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher, So Much I Want to Tell You by Akana, Note to Self by Franta, and Rosemary's Baby by Levin. So we'll go ahead and start with The Princess Diarist. I've actually read this before. It's one of my favorite books kind of ever. I picked it because I knew I liked it and just wanted to get back into the habit of, like, actually reading and figuring out, like, what pace I read things at and stuff again. It's by Carrie Fisher, obviously. She's on the cover. Super cute. It's basically a book where she talks about being a young girl thrown into Hollywood for the first time. She started writing this after she had found some diaries she kept during the filming of A New Hope, and shows off some of those entries, and then the surrounding chapters kind of give those context, as well as expands on what happened after them. So a lot of people, like, actually, like, really heavily criticize this book, and, like, even looking at, like, the reviews and stuff on Goodreads, people were, like, complaining because it wasn't, like, an in-depth behind-the-scenes look at that first film, which is true, but that's kind of literally the point. It's about Carrie's specific experience and the things that she found significant enough to remember and document, and the aftermath of all of that. A lot of the book kind of details her relationship with Harrison Ford, which, to be real, was literally so uncomfy for me to read sometimes, because it was just a little bit too real. It's also kind of wild rereading this because of how many times she makes reference to her own passing, and that was another thing that I had seen, like, in looking at reviews for this recently, was that a lot of people who get to this one kind of comment about that as well. Like, a lot of people, like, couldn't finish it because she mentions, like, dying and death so many times in this book. I feel like overall, though, this is a really good book, and it's worth a read if you're interested in Carrie as a person and not necessarily Star Wars. The pacing is a little funky sometimes, but it's really funny all throughout because she writes it in a way that it's like a relative telling you a story from when they were kids. I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy the way that Carrie writes. I think at some point I'd like to maybe talk about some of her other books if this is, like, a consistent thing that I keep doing. They're just really good. I like them. I recommend it. 10 out of 10. Alright, so the next book I want to talk about is So Much I Want to Tell You by Akana. I knew a little bit about Anna before I started reading this one. To catch you up to speed, she kind of started her career in dedication to her younger sister that committed suicide. She kind of feels like she wants to succeed and make it big in order to tell her sister's story. And I really admire that. I think that that's awesome, and that's a great reason to want a platform. She's a really big advocate for mental health and suicide awareness, and that pops up a lot throughout the book. I picked this up maybe like 2 years ago and just never got around to reading it all the way through. I remember seeing like a short that she had made for one of the chapters in the book, and I liked the premise of her telling her younger sister anecdotes in a way that would help other people. I'm like a sucker for that kind of stuff. But the book isn't entirely like that. I'm like hesitant to criticize it, but I have to. I think I'm just gonna pull up the notes that I had and talk about those. Hold on. Okay, so yeah, I wrote about how the storytelling aspects that I liked and assumed would be in the book were only in certain portions throughout it, and there weren't a lot of them. Like, the short that I mentioned before, it was literally written like a really good narrative piece, and I thought that that would be like a majority of the book, with like maybe some stuff that was like intertwined within it that wasn't so like heavy story based, but it's actually the opposite. A lot of it is like not so much anecdotes and more just, I don't want to call it rambling, but it's kind of rambling. Like, I think in total there's maybe like 4 or 5 actual anecdote stories, and only 2 of them take place post her sister's suicide. It's really sad. I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of potential there, and it was just a missed opportunity. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna read this note really quick and then double back around to that whole like rambling thing that I was just talking about, because this puts it into context. This book was marketed as a book of advice towards her sister about life as a whole, but there was like a heavy focus on success on YouTube or in the acting and writing field. And not to be that girl, but I literally just don't care. And a lot of people who I saw reviewing this, I saw talking about the book, and they weren't fans of that aspect in context to the marketing of the book either. That was weirdly worded, but basically it was like, the book was marketed really heavily as stuff that she wanted to tell her sister, like actual life lessons, actual life stories. And I don't think that there's necessarily something wrong with like making success a part of that and something she wanted to share with her. But it was like, she was trying to write 2 books at the same time, but instead of making them separate things, she combined them. So like they lessened each other. Because I think like notes to your sister are a lot less impactful when you're also in the same vein talking about YouTube success. I don't know. It's like, it's weird to criticize, because like I think that this is obviously a passion project for her. She obviously worked very hard on it, but it's also like, it's not very good. I think if these things existed separately, like if she wrote a book for her sister that was filled with these anecdotes that she had been marketing the book with and making shorts for, and then later published a book about her YouTube success and her career and the reason she's doing it, and the effect that maybe her sister, like, committing suicide had on that, that would have been interesting, and it probably would have done very well. But together they're just a mess, and it kind of disrespects those portions of the book that are actually good. Harsh, but yeah. I gave this one 3 stars. I hope she writes another one at some point. She's like, I don't know, I feel like she has talent and potential, obviously, but she needs to be a little more concise with the points that she's trying to hit. And I don't know if like maybe they told her like this is the only book deal you're ever gonna get or something, and that's why she tried to cram everything into one, but yikes. So on the other side of the coin, the 3rd book I read was A Note to Self by Franta, which, you know, it's another YouTube-y book, but I wouldn't consider it a YouTuber book. It's not really written about like YouTube success or anything, and it's got like very little to do with that. It's got poems and little diary like entries mixed in with some really neat original photography that's printed in color. Oh my god, so cool. It's very much something a person with an actual interest in writing and the art of making a book would make. I didn't know a ton about Connor before I started reading this, but after I finished it, I kind of binged a bunch of his videos, and now I'm low-key a little bit obsessed. But back to the book. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think that it's formatted pretty nicely. Everything blends really well. My only real nitpick with this one was that I kind of felt like the larger portions sometimes read a little bit like scrapped scripts for videos he was trying to make, and it was like painfully obvious, and I didn't really dig that. But this book was also stated to be something that he wanted to feel a little bit less polished when you were reading it, and a little more raw, which makes sense, I guess, since some of the poems were like literally phone notes. I don't know, I'm leaving it. It works in some areas, but not in others. If you publish something that's completely unpolished, it will always look like a mistake, or like you just ran out of time. It bugs me personally, but it isn't enough of a thing for me to lower it in terms of rating, like less than 4. So it's staying at 4, you know? So the last book I read in February is an oldie, but a goodie. It's Rosemary's Baby from Ira Levin, and I know I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. And if that is the case, just shoot me, alright? I don't have a justification for it. I could Google it, but I don't want to open another tab. But yeah, it's Rosemary's Baby, and it's wild. I love the horror genre, but specifically things in the horror genre that don't rely on gore and gross out cutaway stuff. I'm very much more into like psychological thrillers and like psych horror. So this is great. I feel like maybe everyone has heard about this or seen the movie, but just in case, it's a book about a woman that ends up getting sucked into a cult's plot to let Satan have a kid. Simple as that, cut and dry. It's really short. It was written in like the 60s too, though, so there's some dodgy choices of words just because of how people talked then. It's a little problematic, but it's not enough or a major part of anything, so it's not like something that should deter you from reading it. Just be aware of it and like don't let it take you by surprise. I watched the movie when I was a kid, but I haven't ever read the book, so between the two, I want to say that I favor the book. Surprise, surprise. I feel like I'm a lot more attached to Rosemary in it than I am in the film, because she's just a lot better of a character in the book. All of the characters actually feel a little bit more real, and like you can get attached to them a little bit more easier in the book. If I walked into this completely blind and knew nothing about it, I'm pretty sure I would have lost my freaking marbles. It's like that engaging. Like, this was a book that I honestly struggled to put down sometimes. It's really easy to follow despite how much is happening in such a short amount of time. Like I said, it's really short. It's like 180 pages. Despite that, though, the characters within it, you really kind of feel for, and they're super easy to get a hold of and like understand why they're making the choices they are. Like, you're already like categorizing them and like, you know, saying like, oh, this makes sense for this character because they do this. It's so weird. Like, the world building is like so impressive for something so short and so like off the wall, I guess. My biggest reason for like being so excited about this book is that it's finally a piece of horror oriented media where the woman doesn't suffer from like the helpless and stupid trope, you know, like the one where the character is portrayed as super clever and smart until something actually happens that causes conflict in the story, and then the character loses all of their freaking brain cells. Rosemary's really consistent. Everything she does makes sense. She is incredibly clever, and she's like that up until the end. I don't know, it's very, very good. I like it a lot. I really want to read the second one, but I'm a little bit worried because I'm pretty sure that's one of the sequels that people actively go out of their way to ignore. Like, it's one of those books. I don't know why. I'm scared. I don't know if I'll read it or not. We'll see. I gave this one 5 stars, though. It's easily in like my top favorite books, and I'm a little bit mad at myself that it took me this long to get around to reading it. I just didn't think it would be that good, and I was definitely pleasantly surprised. And that's all I've got. I hope you guys enjoyed this and don't mind the slight content shift. I might do another one next month. I kind of had fun talking about these. Who knows? Also, if I mentioned or said something you don't really agree with when I was reviewing them, that's totally cool. These are just my opinions and my experiences with the books. They're not like the end-all authority on anything because I'm like, you know, myself. But if you ever want to talk about it or have any questions or anything about any of the books, I would be totally down to just chat with you in the comments, or you can find me on my other social medias that I link down in the description. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys Sunday for some art stuff, like usual. Later.